So we've gone ahead and moved all the responsibility for creating concert tickets into the publish method of the concert class. But something that I wanted to point out is that we're still actually relying a lot on this add tickets method in a lot of test setup code. So you'll see there's a lot of places here, like in the purchase tickets test, where we want to create a concert in a published state, but then we have to go and add the tickets ourselves. This is not really ideal in my opinion. We're sort of leaking information now about the fact that for a concert to be published, the tickets have to exist. So by saying that this is in a published state, all we're able to do with that is set the published at column, right? We're not able to easily add the tickets as part of saying this concert should be published. And now that the only place that we're using this add tickets method is inside the publish method of the concert, I would be inclined to try and make this add tickets method private now instead of public, since there shouldn't be any way to add tickets without going through that publish method. Now, if we were to make this private instead of public, we wouldn't be able to access it in our tests like this anyways. So we'd have a lot of places in our code. Like you can see, we're calling this add tickets method in a ton of different spots. We'd have a lot of places where we'd have to go and update that and fix that in some way. There's a couple ways that you could fix that, right? One way would be to use factories to add the tickets manually. So instead of calling add tickets 3, we could make a call to the ticket factory and create 3 new tickets underneath and associate those with the concert. Another approach that we could use is to directly publish the concert. So instead of saying that the concert should be published and then creating it with the ticket price and adding the tickets, we could instead say that we want a concert with a ticket quantity of 3, and we want to make sure that we publish that concert. Now, this isn't going to totally work because this publish method doesn't return the concert. So we'd have to do something like this: concert equals factory and then concert publish to publish the concert and create the tickets. Now, if we ran this, ideally this should still pass, and it does. But it would suck to go and make this change every single place in the application and have 2 lines for this sort of thing and have it not be super, expressive. So something that I like to do a lot, similar to what we do with like our valid params helper and stuff like that, when I need to create a model and factories alone are not quite enough to give me what I want, I'll often create a helper method, right? So I might do something like concert equals this create published concert, and then I might pass through the overrides like this. So this is one way of kind of simplifying some of this stuff. We could create this custom method, have that in our base test case or somewhere, and then we wouldn't be relying on sort of these details about publishing the concert or setting the published state. It's just sort of a layer on top of our factories that lets us ask for what we want, but kind of keep all the details about how to do that in one place, so we don't have to make sweeping changes to all of these setup places in all of our tests anytime something like that changes in any way. Now, this method works most of the time, but there is one drawback to it. Right now, if you look at our database seeder, you'll see that I'm relying on our factories with the add tickets method to create our seed data for when we're just poking around in the browser. If we were to go ahead and create this create published concert helper and put that in our tests somewhere, we wouldn't be able to access it from our database seeder because the database seeder is not an instance of a test, right? So there's one other approach that we can use that I think is a really clean solution to this that we can use that lets us access stuff in our tests and also in our database seeders. I'll show you what it looks like. Instead of creating a custom helper method like this, what if we had a custom factory class? What if we had something like this? Concert factory, create published, and we said, here's the ticket price, and here's the ticket quantity. It ends up being, pretty short and nice to read, just like we have here. But because this is in a separate class that we can auto-load and make available to our seeder as well, we can also use it there as well as in our tests. So I'll show you how I create these classes and where I put them. Let's delete this code for now and revert this back to, I guess just this will be fine for now. And let's create this class. So there's a couple places that you could put them. We have this factories folder inside the database folder, right? And this is where we keep our model factories. And these are just the kind of closure-based factory definitions. You might think it would be a good idea to create this like concert factory class inside this factories folder. And it would be nice if this were possible, but it doesn't quite work the way that you expect. So Laravel does some fancy stuff under the hood to load all the files in this folder the first time that you try to call a factory method. And it creates some conflicts and double auto-loading issues and stuff like that if you try to put classes in here that you want to be available all the time. So what I've resorted to doing instead is keeping my factories just directly in the database folder, because I don't want them just in the tests namespace because I'm using them for my database seeders as well. So it's not ideal. It'd be nice if you could stick it in the factories folder, but you can't really easily do that. So sticking it just right in the database folder, I think, is the next best thing. So let's create this class. So it's not going to be in any namespace because none of the stuff in the database folder is namespaced, like you can see with our database seeder here. So it's just going to be a class in the global namespace called concert factory. And we want to create a static method for it called create published. And this is going to accept, some overrides, kind of like we have in a lot of other places. Now, inside this, I'm just going to defer to the regular model factory that we've defined. Again, this is just like a nice convenient layer on top of regular model factories. So all we're going to do is we're going to say concert equals factory concert class create, passing through the overrides. And then we're going to go ahead and publish that concert. And then we'll return that concert. So if we make sure that we import this concert class here, and then if we head over to our terminal and run composer dump autoload to make sure that we load this new concert factory file, since it's just sitting in the database folder and is not loaded with PSR 0 or PSR 4, we have to make sure that we dump the autoloader to pull it in manually. So now that we have this real simple helper, create published, on the concert factory, as long as we've done everything right, we should be able to use that here. So we can say concert equals concert factory, create published, and then pass through the data that we want to use to create that published concert. Now, if we comment out the lines here, import this class by just sticking a slash in front of it, and run this test, you'll see that we're still green. So these custom factory classes can be a really useful way when you need to create a factory helper that's a little bit more sophisticated than what you can easily do with the closure-based definitions, and keep them in a place that's easily accessible from both your database seeders and your tests.